This is our last section, so now we're going to be talking about the vertical line test. We're also going to be discussing domain and range of functions. That's going to be on our board in just a second. So when it comes to the vertical line test, what we check for, it says if any vertical line intersects the graph more than once, then the graph does not represent a function. So if we can draw a vertical line anywhere on a graph and it hits that graph more than once, it's not going to be a function. But if it only hits once at any point on the graph, then it is a function. So we have 4 different examples up on the board, and we're going to check to see if each of these are a function or not. Let's look at this one right here. If we drew a vertical line anywhere on this graph, you see that it's never going to intersect our graph more than once. So therefore, this is a function. Yes. Now let's go down here. This is a line. We've seen a lot of these so far, right? We've been graphing lines all last week. So if we draw a vertical line anywhere through this, we're also going to see that this is a function. So this is yes. Let's look at this one right here. So we have a sideways parabola. We draw a vertical line straight up and down, you're going to see that it intersects the graph twice at this point. That means that this is not a function according to the vertical line test. So this is a no. For the last one here, we have a circle. Now we've already dealt with circles a little bit when we were talking about distance formula and midpoint formula, right? So this is something we're a little bit familiar with. But is a circle a function? Well, if we draw a vertical line test, we see that it fails it. So a circle is not a function. So this is what the vertical line test is. Now we're going to talk about how to find the domain and range of functions. All right, we're here and we're ready to talk about domain and range. So when we're talking about the domain of a function, the domain is how far left it's going to go to how far right it's going to go. And we're going to write that in interval notation. So if we look at our first example here, this is a function. It does pass the vertical line test. If we look and see how far left this graph goes, we see that it's going to go all the way back to -2 on our x-axis. So we want to write this in interval notation. So we're going to put a parentheses because it's an open circle in -2. Now we're going to put a comma. Now we have to look and see how far right it's going to go. As we can see, it's going to go over to +2. So since this is a closed circle, we're going to use a bracket there. So remember, the domain is how far left to how far right you can go. When we're talking about range, we're going to see how far down to how far up we can go. So if we look at this one, the lowest point that it hits is -2, right? So we're not necessarily looking at the endpoints, we're looking at the graph as a whole. So the lowest value that it hits is -2. So our range on the bottom is going to be a bracket in -2. When we look and see how far up it goes, we see that it goes up to +3 on the y-axis. That's as high as it's going to go. So we're going to put a 3 there, and that one's also going to be a bracket in this case. It's very important that you pay attention to whether it's an open circle or a closed circle and put the corresponding parentheses or brackets. This next one's going to be a little bit different because it has arrows instead of endpoints. So if we look at the domain of this one, I'm going to write it over here to the side. We're still going to look to see how far left and how far right it's going to go. But if we look and see how far left this one's going to go, we have to go past our arrow. It's going to keep on going and going and going all the way to -infinity. Right, so it's going to go to -infinity. If we look to the right, it's going to keep on going and it's going to end up going to +infinity because those arrows mean that they continues to go. Now when we look at our range, remember that's how far down to how far up it's going to go. So we look at how far down it's going to go, we see the lowest point on it is at 0 on the y-axis. So our range is going to be 0 with a bracket because there's not an open circle there. But when we look and see how far up it goes, we have to keep in mind of those arrows. It's going to keep on going up and up and up all the way to +infinity. So this is the domain and range for this question. For our last example, we have another segment. So if we look at this one and see how far left or how far right it goes with our domain, look, see how far left, it's going to be -3, right? -3, but since it's a closed circle, we're going to put a bracket. When we look to see how far right it's going to go, it's going to keep on going and go all the way, it looks like to +4. So we're going to put that +4 right there, and that's going to be in parentheses. Now we need to see how far down to how far up it's going to go to get our range. How far down it's going to go is going to be 1, 2, so -2. -2, and that's going to be an open circle because this is an open circle. When you look to see how far up it's going to go, our highest point on the graph is going to be +3. So we're going to put a +3 there. That is a closed point on the graph, so that is going to be a bracket. So this is just a little introduction into domain and range of functions and also the vertical line test. We want to make sure that you understand that when it comes to domain, it's how far left you can go to how far right you can go on the x-axis. When we're talking about range, it's how far down you can go to how far up you can go on the y-axis. So make sure you pay attention to that as you go through your homework and as we start doing our quizzes. Have a great day.